CRPN Central, this is Dr. Fox. Thank you for your continued support of the CRPN mission and CRPN Central. If you like this free education, please subscribe to the CRPN Central YouTube channel today and follow us on LinkedIn. If you'd like to join CRPN as a site or a sponsor, contact us today at info@crpaynet.com. Enjoy the show. Don't forget to share your voice for good and positive change in the industry.
Whoa. You didn't click on that link yet, did you?
No, but I was going to get it done today. We don't want to leave the sponsor
Wait a minute. Let me see that email. Yeah, that's not from the sponsor. That's a phishing scam. Look, it may say that it's from the sponsor, but if you look at the actual email address, it's not. And look at the typos and misspelled words. That is definitely not the sponsor's logo. It's a scam. Let's reach out to the CRA and let them know so they can inform the other sites on the trial.
Wow, I didn't even notice them before. But you're right, this isn't an actual request. The hackers are getting really good these days.
They are. We can't let our guard down as a site. We have so many sponsor portals that it's really easy to look legitimate, but the consequences are harsh. If we get hacked, we could lose the trial, our patients. We might even have to close down the site.
I never thought of it like that. That's a lot of pressure. I'll be careful and keep an eye out for suspicious emails. If there's ever a question, I'll be sure to ask and confirm requests with my sponsor contacts.
How is it after 8 years of college, you couldn't notice all of the misspelled words?
Lots of people go to college for 8 years.
Yeah, they're called doctors.
Yeah, and they don't write anything legible enough to read.
Well, fair point.
Cybersecurity, a critical protection for our data and our companies, and one that is often overlooked until it's too late. Clinical research sites must navigate hundreds of different systems to perform the extent of their trials, and with every ping, every login, and every exchange of sensitive information, they risk a potential of compromising everything if they do not take the necessary precautions. Sites, you are here to serve sponsors and your patients, and to perform the quality research for your communities, but the click of a button could risk everything. If there is the slightest question into the validity of an email, stop immediately. Don't open that file or click on that link, and seek help as soon as possible. Take cybersecurity seriously and seek the help that you need to be safe in this virtual world for your site, your sponsors, and the patients who depend on you to safely and securely work with the sensitive data that so many out there are trying to steal. Welcome to CRPN Central, the official podcast of the Clinical Research Payment Network. I'm your host, Dr. Daniel Fox. CRPN Central discusses the real issues with our clinical research industry to explore and identify mutually beneficial solutions for all of our stakeholders. Sites continually have to engage with sponsors, CROs, and global vendors to successfully perform clinical trials. And with every second, third, and fourth party stakeholder trials require, we see a continuous threat for data security and cybersecurity. In an industry filled with so much potential for data breaches and threats, how do we develop strong cybersecurity practices for safe clinical trial performance? Today, we will discuss site cybersecurity in clinical research, defined as the practice of protecting sensitive patient and proprietary data collected during clinical trials at clinical research sites from unauthorized access, use, or disclosure through the implementation of security measures across electronic systems and networks. First, we will speak with a CTMS founder experienced in data and cybersecurity. Then, we will speak to an organization dedicated to offering comprehensive cybersecurity services to bioscience-level organizations, including clinical research sites. To maintain valid comparisons, both interviews will use the same questions, and my guests did not know the questions before the interviews. We will reconvene after the interviews, compare answers, and perhaps identify how we, as an industry, may optimize our industry's cybersecurity for safe and efficient clinical trial performance. Our first guest has substantial experience and interest in computer science, has graduated from Georgia Tech, worked with a world-class security organization, founded Bitcoin and cryptology protection startups, and now is leading the way for a new kind of streamlined and automated clinical site software. Josh Vorick is the founder of Flint, an up-and-coming CTMS provider who is dedicated to creating a better kind of software solution for our clinical research sites. Josh's experience and interests bring promise to a revolutionary kind of site experience in software, and I am so thankful he has taken the time to speak with us today. Please welcome with me, Josh Vorick. Josh Vorick, thank you so much for coming on to CRPN Central today.
Thank you for having me, Dr. Fox. Excited to be here.
Would you be willing to introduce yourself to the audience?
So I'm Josh. I founded Flint, which is a new software company in the clinical research space about a year and a half ago. Before that, my background studied computer science at Georgia Tech, focused on theory and AI. Really love computer science, have always been interested in cryptography. That's like the really nitty-gritty weeds of cybersecurity. After that, I went and worked at a company called Palantir. Basically, my job was to go out to different businesses and different industries, banks, manufacturing, airlines, and really understand their needs and kind of help build data-driven solutions for them. A big part of that was interfacing with their IT departments. Every IT department has their own philosophies, their own trauma stories of times that cybersecurity went wrong. Learned a lot of things. While I was there, I actually also did a crypto startup. Fast forward some years, I spent some time as an EMT, a lot of appreciation for medical workers. I realized tech is for me, and through different meetings and things, saw this opportunity in clinical research where there's just such desperate need for better software, especially for small research sites who don't have the money that a sponsor has or that a CRO or big medical center has. Now I've been working on Flint. We basically try to help sites encode their budgets so that they can track finances throughout a study.
You just talked about your background, significant background in AI theory, in computer science, in programming, helping with protection in crypto, all of these amazing experiences put together into a founder of a CTMS platform. I could only imagine, what is your vision of Flint given your past?
I'm really excited. I think there's so many incredible technologies that we can bring to clinical researchers. You can't build good software unless you understand what the user needs to do. You can't build a tool for someone if you don't understand what their end goal is and how they need to achieve that. The core piece right now is our finance tracking and making sure that we just get all of the fundamentals right there. Once we do that, there's huge opportunities to build agentic AIs on top of that to start to connect automation. We're focused on making sure that we really understand the building blocks, and currently working on eSource and have had some mocks that I'm pretty excited about, and hoping early this year to start releasing some automations and some AIs integrated into the platform.
Today's episode is cybersecurity, specifically that cybersecurity that clinical research sites have to establish to protect them, their stakeholders like sponsors and CROs, and importantly, their patients from some very significant challenges and threats that are out there in the industry. I'm going to ask you a series of questions today, and I've already asked these questions to another individual. We're going to take your answers to these questions and we'll compare them to the answers of that other individual so that maybe we can try to align cybersecurity for sites and how we can find optimal best practices or maybe uses of cybersecurity for a better industry.
That sounds great.
In the world of cybersecurity, could you walk me through the critical components to successful cybersecurity, from the intake of data at a site to the destruction of data?
Cybersecurity is part of the larger umbrella, which is just your site's security and does tie into physical security. And I think those two things can't be talked about totally separately. Just the physical security is the data that's being shown on a digital screen. Is that screen well protected? Within your site, there's sort of all the systems they pass through. And then from there, that's where it explodes out. And now you can start emailing that data, shipping that around. The first and most important thing is just good SOP SOPs and making sure that you have very clear outlines on where that data comes in, where that data is going to be stored, what's allowed to have PHI, what's not allowed to have PHI, and making sure that everyone on your site is on the same page there. And then part of that also ties into the data deletion and making sure that you have a plan and that it's not multiple hours of work trying to find every single piece of paper that is related to that one person or that one thing. Then the other piece is kind of like your defenses, which is what gets talked about a lot more. How do you now protect those systems and make sure that they're secure? And a lot of times that's both physical protection. You've probably heard don't ever plug in a strange USB. That is still extremely true, very scary. If a dedicated hacker wanted to compromise you, you'd be screwed. So part of that is physical security, and then part of that is the cybersecurity side of setting up firewalls, VPNs, protecting your passwords.
You had mentioned that there are these silos of cybersecurity to consider. One of them is the virtual cybersecurity, the one that we know about with hackers and things like that. You mentioned the term physical. Does that mean your computer screen is locked behind some door so that only personnel can access this? It's not in a lobby where everyone can see it? Or is it the physical media, the USB thumb drive that goes into your computer?
So it's both of those. We're all familiar with privacy screen protectors to make sure that only the intended people can see what's coming up on the screen. And you have to be mindful of if you're going to have certain screens in the common lobby area. But it also does mean physical security. If I set my work laptop down in a public area, even if it's locked, and someone, when I'm not looking, is able to physically access it and plug in a USB.
Yep.
They can unplug it, they can walk away. That's compromised, and now I don't know and potentially won't know for years. It definitely ties into both of those.
And especially those coordinators who have laptops that go to busy clinics to see patients. We actually ran into a situation where we were at a big clinic and the IT department was cracking down on cybersecurity, and they shut down USB ports on all computers. But that was very challenging for the site because of temp tails. So every time you get a shipment, you have a temp tail that is, guess what? It's a USB. You have to plug it into a computer and download the temp tail. So we had to get an exception from the IT department to do temp tails and anything else, because sponsors will send you a USB drive to upload it for doc storage, things like that. So there are times that sites are required to use this kinds of physical media. And when that doesn't align with the institution that you're in, that gets very challenging.
Yeah. And I think that's where it just comes down to practicality. Any cybersecurity plan you tell me could come up with probably a dozen different ways to poke holes in it. Even the sponsor issued USBs. Who knows? Maybe the sponsor didn't keep track of them. Maybe the sponsor's manufacturer. Maybe something happened there. Maybe it was manufactured in a different country with a different government, or any country with any government. There is some level of risk that you have to take on, focusing on the most practical things, the things that you have the most control over and the lowest hanging fruit. You'll never have cybersecurity perfect practices. You'll just have cybersecurity best practices. And that's where IT has to understand the risks, and the clinicians have to understand the importance from the sponsor. Communication needs to happen to figure out like where the reasonable line is.
Okay, there's physical and there's virtual cybersecurity, but then there's also preventative and reactive cybersecurity. How do you prevent something from happening? But if it ever does happen, what are your conditions?
Yeah, just keeping up with best practices. In my world of more software, a lot of reactive cybersecurity. The news will never hit the site. There's all sorts of crazy security vulnerabilities and exploits and these things called 0 days that I could tell lots of stories about. You'll never hear about them. What will happen is your phone will say, hey, there's a new update available, and that will have everything patched and figured out. Practically, sites really just have to focus on the preventative and making sure that you're doing whatever you can and have those SOPs for the reactive.
If you ever see, hey, there's a new update available, there's a reason why there's a new update available. Something has been identified and they need to fix it. I don't know how many people out there, oh, I'll put this update off. I don't have time today. I can't lose my phone right now. I'll do it tonight. And they just keep putting that update off. But those things are pretty important.
Yeah. And for every single person who's putting those updates off, I can guarantee you that there's some software engineer looking at his metrics being like, God, there was this ultra terrifying bug that I put into the code and I patched it really quickly. But why is someone from 2.5 years ago still using that version of the code? please get off that code that I wrote, especially for anything that PHI passes through that patient data might touch or any sensitive research data. Make sure that your operating system, your browsers are up to date.
What do you think are the challenges that our sites face in cybersecurity?
The biggest challenge that I've seen is passwords and managing a bunch of different logins. Cannot recommend enough using a password manager. We use one called 1Password. It's the one that I've assessed and feel the safest using. I've tried other ones. They all mostly do the same thing. So by using a password manager, you can use secure passwords for all of your different logins. Remember which one is for which login. And even for any shared credentials or even like shared secure notes, you can share that with different folks and have that managed in an ultra secure space instead of trying to remember them and remembering the rules that you use to change them every 3 months or every 6 months, or having your post-it note or your secret Excel spreadsheet. Those all work, but there's another solution that works better. Let the experts handle it. Let the people who know how to manage passwords manage your passwords.
How do you feel about PIs giving their passwords to coordinators to do their things because they just don't have time to do something?
I think that that is obviously a cybersecurity violation and should be against your site's SOPs. And if you do it, you should know that you're violating your site's SOPs.
I think it's a felony to represent another person in clinical research. I believe is a felony.
Yeah.
Anyone listening, I know you're out there. I know you do it. PIs, I know you do it. It is a felony. And if you are caught, it could be substantial. Sometimes I feel like sites are put in this position where they are just expected to trust whatever a sponsor gives to them because sponsors have more money. Sponsors invest in this. Sponsors must obviously have better systems because they have more money. Anything a sponsor gives to a site is just expected to be received without question and without validation. That is a huge cybersecurity threat for a site.
Yeah, I've definitely heard tell of it. It is a big risk. It's unclear to me if the software isn't safe and isn't secure, whether it's the site's fault for using it or the sponsor's fault for telling the site to use it.
I have run into situations where it's a matter of indemnification. And that's a huge thing with third parties, especially sponsor provided vendors, where these third parties, they will not indemnify themselves with sites. So it's sponsors saying, you have to use this system. This is what you will use for this trial. And by the way, if anything is ever compromised, these third party vendors are not liable. You are, even though you don't have a choice in whether or not to use it. Huge challenge.
Yeah, that sounds like sponsors knowing that they can get away with bullying.
Yeah, that B word, I was thinking the same. And it goes back to the whole, we're this big global company. You're this little bitty local organization. We have more visibility in the world. We have all this stuff. We are better than you. So if we're better than you, then you will do what we say because we're better than you. And many, many times, that is the relationship that sponsors expect of sites when they bring technology to the site.
Yeah, I'm hopeful that this latest wave of AI will solve a lot of our integration problems. And that's something that I don't know where I can put it on the roadmap for Flint, but would love to just say, hey, we will be the interface between you and the other systems instead of you having to be the interface between 50 different systems.
What are the consequences of failed cybersecurity?
The main consequence of failed cybersecurity that we hear about is information leaks, data leaks, PHI getting out, credit card information getting out, people's contact information getting out. In some ways, that's just because that's like the most detectable. Really, there's a million ways that failed cybersecurity can go unnoticed. That is the scariest. If you want to see examples of that, I love sometimes watching DEF CON talks on YouTube. DEF CON is this really incredible conference that is like cash only, that you're told explicitly not to bring any of your personal devices because there's lots of black hat, gray hat, white hat hackers, FBI and CIA agents. Anyone who wants to know anything goes to DEF CON. And it's like, if you even accidentally connect to your hotel Wi-Fi, your bank account is empty. Sorry, but that's just how broken security actually is. And the reason for that is that there's broken Wi-Fi protocols. And if your phone tries to connect to a public network, and that public network is actually one that a hacker set up, do some pretty nasty things. And anytime you're feeling optimistic about cybersecurity, just go watch a DEF CON talk and be like, wow, wow, if there was a really determined person, they could stalk me by my phone and like I wouldn't have anything to do about it. And so I think that's where you just need the diligence of following cybersecurity best practices, rotating your password. There's a lot of people who put a lot of effort into making things secure. And so as long as you follow the roads that they've set out, you should be pretty good. Cybersecurity follows, I think, natural selection in that it's really, really hard to tell if something new is secure or not. This is true even of like physical security, because there's a million creative ways that an attacker could do something that you just didn't even think of. I think failed cybersecurity just looks like negligence. There's a lot of things that can come out of that won't get noticed until it's too late.
Reading contract after contract and looking at the consequences of cybersecurity for sites, it's insane the amount of liability that sites take on as a result of cybersecurity. If anything is compromised, anything at all, on the sponsor side, they could go after you for the IP because their trial didn't succeed. The patients could come after you because, of course, their information was leaked. The stakes are very high.
Yeah.
Not just short term, not just the consequence of that breach, but the consequence of generations of patients who may not be able to access a certain treatment because there's cybersecurity. Let's say the sponsor's IP was leaked and now it's no longer patentable. You're done.
Yeah.
And generations of people may not have access to a therapeutic. No pressure sites, no pressures at all, but it kind of brings a weight onto how important cybersecurity is if you look at the exponential consequences.
Yeah. Site operators, site owners are entrepreneurs. You've got to go figure out how to do this research thing and how to do a million other things. One of those things is also understanding the cybersecurity of the business.
I remember talking to a lot of people, a lot of site owners, like you said, entrepreneurs, and they all have said a lot of the same things. They said, rule number one, you get a really good accountant. Rule number two, you get a really good lawyer. But after these conversations, I think rule number three, or even rule number one, especially because of today, would be get some good IT because there's so much that's wrapped around it. How may we improve cybersecurity for clinical research sites in the industry?
The simple answer is education, making sure that this is something that folks are thinking about, that we're communicating it, that sites' voices about being forced to use software and taking on liabilities, that they're being heard by the sponsors. It's just got to be a big push. We've got to talk about it more and acknowledge the risks. And a piece of that is accepting that there is going to be some risk, that we're not going to have a perfectly secure plastic box of security. The US government goes to crazy measures to do that for some of their systems. Can't expect that of sites. Keeping it an open conversation, staying up to date with what industry best practices are, what reasonable best practices are for cybersecurity, so that the effort that you do put into it gets you as much mileage as possible. Let the security professionals do their thing and raise the floor.
Maybe even moving toward a world of specialization. When sites are starting, they're generalists. They have to do everything. They have to wear every hat, including cybersecurity. The sooner you can specialize IT into its own, where they can focus 100% on cybersecurity and processes at all times, I think the better.
Yeah.
And like you were just saying in the beginning, Flint was designed because there's sites out there that can't afford very expensive software packages. The same goes for IT. These guys are cash strapped. Being able to get this available to the sites that need it, to protect them and their communities so they can do their best. It's a really, really, really important thing.
Yeah, and I'm very aligned with the idea of specialization. Being an entrepreneur has taught me that you make progress by focusing on the thing that is uniquely yours. And for sites, that's not their cybersecurity, that's not their IT infrastructure. I think for most sites, it's their patients, it's their relationships with their patients, with their community around them, it's their staff culture. Focus on those things and making sure that you do those well. And the things that fall outside of that, like outsource. Big fan of keep it stupid simple and do that where you can. Lean on experts where it makes sense.
Where you need it. Trust the experts, especially in cybersecurity. You don't want to spend your entire life learning the code if you're looking at patients and helping patients and you're a PI. Trust the experts. If I were to hand you the microphone right now and I said, what would you like to tell the entire industry about cybersecurity and how we can make it better for our sites? What would you tell them?
First and foremost, get a password manager. Sites, looking at you. Vendors, I would say try not to give sites so many passwords to manage. Flint plug, we don't have passwords. We have secure email sign-in links. SSO with Google, we're looking to add more. Vendors make folks' lives easier, use passkeys. Sites have good password SOPs. If you need to share passwords, do it in a password manager. Keep your software updated. The one other thing we didn't touch on is phishing. Don't get phished.
Yeah, don't get fished.
Especially with LLMs, there's going to be some good phishing out there, some good bait.
The waters are ripe, unfortunately. And sometimes you don't know what to trust and you don't know what's real anymore.
Yeah, so stay skeptical. Always better to verify than to take a leap of faith when it comes to security.
Password manager, go get it now. Talk to Flint. I can tell you from personal experience that I do enjoy Flint. Vendors, be kind to your sites. You are not the only person that they have to work with, and you need to be knowledgeable of that. The more streamlined you can make it, the better. And if we can all get together, raise awareness, have a password manager, and be very mindful that cybersecurity is a true threat, maybe we can build a better cybersecurity future for this industry.
Yeah, love it. Let's keep talking about it.
Josh, thank you so much for coming on to CRPN Central. An excellent conversation. I'll see you next time.
Yeah, it's been great. Thank you so much for having me, Dr. Fox.
I'll talk to you later.
Talk to you later.
Bye.
See ya.
Our next guest is the CEO of a service provider dedicated to ensuring their site clients are safe, secure, and efficient in all things IT. Ron Twaddell is the CEO of RPM Technologies, an organization dedicated to helping sites with all of their information technology needs. Embracing their Indiana culture, RPM helps to drive IT faster for sites, creating customized infrastructures that are suited to the specialized needs of research sites. And I am so glad he is taking the time to speak with us today. Please welcome with me Ron Twaddell. Ron Twaddell, thank you so much for coming on to CRPN Central today.
Thank you for having me.
Would you be willing to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Ron Twaddell. I am CEO at RPM Technologies. We are a managed service provider and we provide IT support, and we have a focus on the clinical site industry. So this is a big focus for us as far as supporting the clinical sites.
And if you were at SCRS, I believe this was the group that had the Ricky Bobby jacket.
We did. We got lots of comments and lots of interest on our racing simulator. We're from Indianapolis, so we embrace our racing heritage. It kind of goes into our tagline of drive IT faster.
What IT specific services does RPM do for the sites?
Think about it as we become your IT department. We have some customers where it's holistically we become IT for them. We provide service desk, manage servers, all desktops, network from an IT perspective. The infrastructure in what I like to call the plumbing of IT is what we manage from top to bottom.
Do you also engage with third parties as needed?
Yes, absolutely. We're consistently building relationships with software vendors, our clients, software providers. We want to give our clients a one-stop shop from IT in the perspective of, hey, something's going wrong. Where do we go? Well, you come to us first. We help you sort that out. And then we work with your vendors on opening issues with them on your behalf and work with you on that. Or sometimes we'll do some of the management of a third-party software, mostly around making sure your employees have access to the applications that they need to do their job.
I can't tell you how many hours I have seen sites have to spend on IT. Generally, there's some computer savvy CRC who becomes the IT department for a site, and then they can't see patients anymore, and it's just a giant mess. It sounds like RPM is providing a comprehensive outsourced IT service dedicated to the needs of a site.
Yes.
Wow, that's huge. I'm so glad you're doing that. I could imagine you're staying pretty busy. There's a lot of sites who I'd imagine like you a lot.
Yes, we are very busy, and it's a great problem to have.
Today's topic is cybersecurity at clinical research sites, specifically the need to have the processes and the procedures in place so that sites can protect themselves on a cybersecurity level when they are serving global sponsors, global CROs, global partners, but also having the processes in place to stay secure at all times. I'm going to ask you a series of questions today, and I'm going to ask those questions to another individual. We're going to compare what you say to the answers of the other individual so that maybe we can try to find some form of alignment between how we as an industry can improve the strength of our site's cybersecurity for better and more comprehensive and quality research.
Make sense?
Can you walk me through the critical components of successful cybersecurity from the intake of data at a site to the destruction of data?
It's about protecting the data all along the way. Most of the sites are using a third party application for collecting data on patients. Making sure those third parties are doing what they're supposed to be doing is one component of that. The other component of that is securing the infrastructure and making sure that the infrastructure and the access to those IT resources are secure. We do that in several different ways. We make sure that we're using multi factor authentication, we're making sure that password policies are in place and updates are happening as they need to be, and then securing everybody's endpoints and securing their environments so that we can monitor and protect. From a cybersecurity perspective, we're always looking at something's going to happen along the way. How quickly can we react? And having tools in place so that you can react quickly if something bad happens is probably more important than trying to do a whole bunch of things to prevent things. Not that you don't want to prevent them, but you definitely want to make sure you can respond quickly. One of the other parts that's extremely important, we do security awareness and phishing training. It is vital, and employees actually do pay attention to that security training and that phishing training, and they become more and more aware of, I got this email and it says it's from Microsoft, but when I hover over it, it's really from a Yahoo address.
Yeah, or some other weird address.
Right, exactly. That has actually become one of the more vital pieces that we provide to our business partners.
It's training maybe to the CRCs or anyone who is at the organization.
Yep,
It makes sense because if you can make the user aware so that they don't click on something malicious, then you'll be preventing a problem altogether.
correct.
Do you work with your clients to actually write site SOPs to help them with their technology?
The sites normally have their SOPs. We will review and comment on SOPs. If a customer comes to us and wants us to help out with writing some of the IT SOPs, we absolutely do that also. From that standpoint, we adhere to the SOPs that are written.
You had mentioned third parties, and I know sites have to deal with third parties all the time. What kind of third parties do you normally have to engage with or work with?
Most of them are software vendors. The hardware vendors, obviously, we deal with that on the MSP side with endpoints, with PCs and laptops and networking hardware and things like that. But then most of the engagement is on the software vendor side of things, making sure that we're securing the software environment, securing access into those software environments. I mean, there's a couple different ways that we do that.
The first thing that comes to mind is like a CTMS platform. That's like a
Exactly.
software third party.
Yep.
Any other kind of software third parties that sites generally have to engage with?
And most of them are the CTMSs. From a third party standpoint, there is more and more software coming available to the sites. As we work with more sites and things like that, we encounter different types of software and different software for different purposes. And we work with those software vendors also. Billing is one, patient engagement, and things like that.
What about sponsor provided software that's a third party?
That's always a unique case. And normally we find out what the software is going to be used for the sponsor. A lot of times that software is in order for the sponsor to collect data. We'll dedicate a PC and we'll work with the sponsor to get the software installed. Sponsors also come to us with security requirements. We'll look through those contracts and we'll look through the requirements from that standpoint, and we'll work with our customers to make sure that we're meeting those requirements from the sponsors.
I know now there's EDCs, there's informed consents, there's regulatory platforms, all provided by sponsors.
Yep,
Sites have to use these for these trials. No questions asked is mandatory.
correct.
Sites are mandated to use third party platforms specific to studies from sponsors. It feels like that could bring about some pretty big challenges in cybersecurity.
The challenges from a site perspective is that we want to make sure we're securing everything up until they start accessing that software. A lot of that software is SaaS-based software where they're going to a website and you're working with the software from that perspective. Once we get them securely logged in and they're on that site, the security responsibility transfers into that software, into the sponsor.
So, as long as the login is secure, everything within that portal should be okay,
Correct. And even a lot of the access into those portals is the responsibility of the provider of the software.
meaning the sponsor.
Right. Now, the CTMSs, most of the CTMS applications will allow us to do SSO. So that means you can use your Microsoft credentials to get into the CTMS. And then we can add new layers of security on top of that since we're controlling the login.
You can encrypt it accordingly.
Encrypt it, but we can also put other requirements on it. One of the things that we're working on this year is moving our customers not only to that you've got MFA, but now you're also using a device. Your PC has actually been registered and is known and is monitored and managed by us. You can't go to your cousin's house on the weekend and log in on his computer anymore.
Yeah.
That is becoming more and more important as we go forward from a security standpoint. It's adding layers of security. Security is a stack of things that we do in a layered fashion. Okay, I got my user ID, plus I got my password, that's layer one, plus I got MFA, that's layer two, plus I'm on a known device, that's layer three.
It's not just the IP address, there's a serial number to the device that you're looking at.
It's actually been joined and we can monitor it and manage it within the Microsoft environment. It's controlled by us.
Isn't it ironic that technology is supposed to help us be more agile and mobile and work from home and all this stuff? But then cybersecurity has to come in, and now it almost limits what technology could have allowed us to do.
We talk about it all the time about how much of our job is spent dealing with some misguided individuals in the world.
Yeah. We have the intake of data, and it sounds like as long as we have that login credential, the login is one of the most important things.
Mhm.
How do we ensure cybersecurity throughout the lifetime of these data?
For us, it really becomes around PCs and servers if we have physical servers in the environment. We manage the lifespan of a PC from cradle to grave. From the time we set up a PC and register it for a customer, it goes through its useful life. The end of that is a secure destruction of that PC where we take the PC, we take the hard drive out. We have a partner that we deal with that does certified destruction and we get certificates on the destruction of those hard drives. And that is important. Working in this clinical space, there is PHI, there is clinical data that are on people's PCs, they're on people's hard drives. So we have to make sure that we secure that. One of the key pieces that we make sure that we do is that everybody's endpoints are encrypted. If an endpoint was to get stolen, that there is no possibility of somebody being able to access the data on that hard drive.
Sites are contracted by sponsors. They have to hold on to these data for 15 to 25 years.
Yep.
In that world, do you ever help sites maintain and manage their long-term document storage?
We have done some things with long term storage, but most of their data from that perspective is usually in one of the CTMS applications or outside of that. There have been situations where, yes, we do have mechanisms to be able to say, okay, this data needs to be kept for this long. And we tend to go to a cloud provider and do long term storage in a cloud provider.
And just manage and maintain it and make sure it's still there.
Yep, exactly.
What do you think are some of the challenges that our sites have for a strong cybersecurity?
The easy one to say is that the users are always the weakest link.
Okay, before I start, something just popped in my mind, but what do you find is the weakest link user in the world of clinical research?
The weakest link user. Are you going to make me say it?
Okay, from my experience, I find that the PIs are by far one of the worst users that tech people work with.
Yes, yes.
They don't want to deal with the technology. They don't want to deal with the training. They don't want this. They give their CRCs their logins.
Yes. And here's a little funny story. I worked at a previous company, and my number one security problem was my CEO.
Yep, the admins who say they don't have time for this, so they give it to their assistant.
Yeah, it's kind of the same thing in this industry. The busy people are the ones that are a challenge. And I get it. The cybersecurity training and things like that, it's important, but managing their time is a difficult task for them.
And I find that sometimes people don't value cybersecurity until it's too late.
100% agree. We've gotten many, many calls from customers who we've had conversations with talking about cybersecurity, talking about what they should do, and nothing ever changes until something happens. And then something happens, and all of a sudden now everything has to get done in 3 weeks.
any kind of a threat or a malware.
Yep.
Let's say that actually happens to a site. What do you think could be the consequence of that?
Well, obviously, the worst consequence is that they have to make a filing with the government on a data breach. That is potential fines. That is loss of credibility in the industry.
And if I'm not mistaken, depending on the CTAs that sites sign, every single CTA, it says in the event of a data breach, they have to notify the sponsor. There's a big process
Correct.
there. If you lose your cybersecurity as a site and you have 100 trials, that's 100 sponsors that you're going to have to contact. That's 100 sponsors that have just lost their faith in you. You have to file with the government. Odds are you may have 100 lawsuits from those 100 sponsors that are mad about their data. The stakes are pretty high when it comes to cybersecurity for a site.
It absolutely is. I did something not too long ago on the cost of a breach. I think they're putting the average cost at around $5 million.
Wow.
But you got to look at that there's really small ones and really large ones. Even at the average, it's one of those things where until you have it happen and you have somebody who is caught in a phishing campaign, their email gets compromised, all of a sudden an invoice gets paid by your accounts payable department that didn't come from the right place. The cost of that versus the cost of doing the right things and making sure everybody's trained, making sure we have the phishing software in place to try to prevent those things. It's not going to be 100%, but it does a great job of at least reducing the threat that you're under. It's one of those things where if I tell you it's going to cost you $50,000 today, but you won't lose $5 million this year, it's an investment and it's unfortunately a necessary one.
And unfortunately, you pay $50,000 and nothing happens. And you think to yourself, this is a waste of money because nothing happened. But the fact that nothing happened was the service provided.
Agreed.
In my mind, it seems like IT and IT support, it's critical for a clinical research site, but I think it's the last thing you think about.
It's critical not only just from the cybersecurity perspective, but it's critical just to support your business. If your business and you have an IT environment that is not functioning properly, you're wasting employee time. If an employee sits down and they're struggling to print documents that they need, they're struggling to download the documents that they need just because configurations aren't set up correctly and the environment isn't set up correctly, it's real dollars that you're spending in wasted productivity. We look at it and saying that our job is to make sure that you can do your job.
Now, I know there may be people out there listening to this saying, oh, I'm fine. It will never happen to me. This is
Sure.
rare. It's for those people who don't have any common sense. Does this happen to clinical research sites?
It happens in all industries. Absolutely, it happens. The most frequent thing that we see as far as cybersecurity and issues are around trying to get phishing and getting invoices paid. Some of the things that we've seen is an email from a vendor saying, hey, change our bank account to this. All of our customers, we work with them and say, an email is not a sufficient way to go about changing a bank account. You have to have other verification methods other than just an email. Those are the things we see most frequently because they're easy. It's a user-based exercise. There's not a lot of technology involved. You're doing social engineering. The other ones that we do see, yes, we do see at times where we're blocking malware from being downloaded. That's a little bit more serious and things like that. We do see that less frequently than the ones that are really targeting users.
So they'll try to get the decision makers in a site or in an organization saying, hey, I want you to do XYZ without any kind of a verification beyond an email being sent.
Oh, sure. Or it's a text message. One of my employees came to me the other day and said, you're sending me text messages. And I said, no, I'm not.
How may we improve cybersecurity for clinical research sites?
Improvement is doing the basics, really making sure that you're doing the training, you're doing the endpoint management. And it comes down to making sure that your endpoints are patched, making sure that you have the software and the security software that is needed to prevent bad things from happening in your environment. And it's always ongoing. What are the new attacks that are going on? What are the new phishing campaigns going on? And we're always adjusting our back end and the things that we do to match what we see coming at us.
Does AI have anything to do with cybersecurity now?
Well, sure. Some of the software that we have does exactly that. It creates a profile of what's normal use on a PC. If it starts to see abnormal use, it will alert us saying, hey, this PC started connecting to a website in China. Now we do country blocking on the network so that all of our customers at customer sites, you can't get to certain countries because they're bad actors and we want to prevent anything bad from happening.
The story you just told about how you had an employee come to you saying, hey, you're sending me text messages. It's almost like another layer of MFA, only it's like a social MFA. Whenever something happens to me where I'm thinking something isn't right here, I'll try to contact that individual through another way.
Correct.
Actually talking to each other seems like a really good layer of protection, not just trusting in the email as the sole source, but really trying to confirm.
Absolutely. And security starts with users and being vigilant and diligent. And like you said, if you have a gut feeling that something is wrong, it probably is. And you probably want to double check it.
That happened to me just yesterday. I had this email and it was someone trying to get me to sign something for Adobe. It looked really generic and the website looked off. And I'm like, nah, this is. So I always do the diligence and I actually report it. I report it as phishing. I make sure that I contribute saying, I don't want this to happen to someone else. And wouldn't you know it, within hours, one of my sites emailed me and said, hey, do you think this is a scam?
Mhm.
And I replied and I said, it is absolutely a scam because I got the exact same thing and I reported it as phishing.
Yep.
We can all help each other with cybersecurity, just kind of watch each other's backs.
Oh, yeah. And that's one of the mechanisms that we do. We have software that allows users to report phishing. We investigate every one of those reports that we get. And many times when we get the first report, it's not the only one we see. And we're able to proactively go out and pull those emails out of everybody's inbox before they get opened.
They don't even have a chance to open it because you can put that layer of protection up there.
Absolutely.
Do you give sites reports of all the things that were blocked or all the things that have happened?
Yeah, for all of our customers, we do quarterly business reviews. We review issues that we've had, and it can be user issues or cybersecurity issues. But we go through all of those things. We talk about our performance. We solicit customer satisfaction from all of our tickets. We have those metrics. We have those conversations with all of our customers.
And do you have some pretty good metrics for satisfaction for RPM?
Absolutely. We're always above 95%.
Nice.
Considering that we do 3,000, 4,000 tickets a month, our staff does a great job.
If I were to hand you the microphone right now and I said, what would you like to tell the entire industry about clinical research site cybersecurity and how we may improve it overall for the industry, what would you tell them?
It really starts with the user and really making sure that the users are aware, doing the training. It's not that the other stuff isn't important, it absolutely is. But cybersecurity really starts with the users and the users being diligent and vigilant on what they're doing and understanding what they're doing.
Awareness, education, diligence, compliance, all at the user level, making sure our users, the front lines, are doing everything appropriately, that they're not putting their organizations in trouble on a cybersecurity level, that they're thinking twice about what they're clicking, that they're not sharing their passwords, that they're doing all of these things that are really, really important. If we can get that nailed down, then we as an industry can have a much more secure online experience.
Yes.
Ron, thank you so much for coming on to CRPN Central. An excellent conversation. I look forward to the live event here where we can follow up a little bit. We'll talk to you later.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Josh has specialized in computer science from AI theory and cryptology to data-driven solution customization for years. Now, at Flint, he is designing the next generation CTMS experience dedicated to learning the building blocks needed to develop a better kind of AI-driven and automated system for clinical research sites throughout the industry. Cybersecurity is an umbrella of a site's security as a whole, and strong SOPs are critical to a site's overall protection. We must be mindful of physical protection, such as privacy screens and avoiding untrusted USB drives, to strong cybersecurity, such as password managers and maintained and patched systems. There are no perfect cybersecurity practices, only best cybersecurity practices, and we must find the risks between the practicality of performing trials and strong cybersecurity. Sites are often challenged when they are expected to use sponsor-provided tech without a vetting process, which can lead to a significant problem in indemnification. And if we stay mindful of cyber threats and diligent with best practices, stay skeptical and verify, let the experts handle our passwords and security, and keep it stupid simple, we may be able to continuously manage, maintain, and grow a strong cybersecurity culture in the industry. Ron and the RPM team are setting a new bar of quality and cybersecurity to drive IT faster for our clinical research sites. RPM serves as a full-service outsourced IT program that provides management and infrastructure to sites and manages physical PCs and devices from cradle to grave. Cybersecurity begins at the users, and maintaining strong training and IT SOPs is critical to raising awareness of threats and protecting infrastructure with passwords and MFAs, and even credentialed PCs continually adds layers of IT protection to adapt and protect from the ever-changing security threats, as long as we can get our weakest links and the very busy users to stay trained and updated. Prevention is important. However, it is critical to have the plans and procedures in place to react quickly in the event of cybersecurity problems, such as socially engineered single-user attacks that request bank account changes, all the way to malware downloads and network-wide threats. Cybersecurity, unfortunately, is often not important until millions of dollars in damages are lost, and you know your IT investments are working when nothing happens. And if we are diligent and vigilant with the basics, we train our users and follow our guts, we may be able to build a safer cyber experience for all of our users across the industry. Both of today's individuals confirmed the critical threats and consequences of improper cybersecurity SOPs and policies. Both of today's guests also resonated on the importance of proper training and continuously managed and maintained infrastructure. And while Ron highlighted the importance of having strong processes in place to address cybersecurity breaches, Josh discussed the critical need for sites to build strong and preventative measures, such as password managers and physical protection. So, how do we develop strong cybersecurity practices for safe clinical trial performance? Throughout Ron's layers of cyber protection at RPM and Josh's streamlined and ultra-secure practices, both of our guests align throughout three distinct principles. To maintain and enhance cybersecurity for our sites, we must focus closely on education, processes, and diligence. Work with your staff members to raise awareness to the importance of cybersecurity and train them to understand how to be responsible users. Build the infrastructures and SOPs that your site needs to remain safe in an ever-changing cyber world of threats. And never let your guard down. Stay skeptical and remain diligent to the best practices of the industry. It's a continuous battle. However, the tools are here in the industry to ensure the data for our sites, our sponsors, and our patients are fully protected at all times. Thank you for joining a very important and inspiring cybersecurity episode. I don't know about you, but I know after listening to this episode, I'll be performing a checkup on my cybersecurity, and I encourage you to do the same. If you have any questions about your site's cybersecurity, reach out to RPM to see what they can do to help. And if you are looking for the best and evolving CTMS experience in the industry, reach out to Josh and learn how Flint can revolutionize your site's financial software. Thank you to both Ron and Josh for taking the time to speak with us today. Thank you to our CRP and Short Voice volunteers for starting today's conversation. Finally, thank you to my sponsors for making this podcast possible. Thank you again for listening, and we'll see you next time on CRP and Central.